Oh yeah, you're right, mate. I'll see you later.
Right. Βρισκόμαστε στο χώρο του Hillsborough Justice Campaign, ένας οργανισμός ο οποίος δημιουργήθηκε για την ηθική και υλική υποστήριξη των ανθρώπων αυτών που είτε έχασαν ανθρώπους δικούς τους στο Hillsborough Disaster, είτε αργότερα επιβίωσαν μερικοί από αυτούς με προβλήματα υγείας. Κοντά μας έχουμε την κυρία Sheila Coleman. Η κυρία Sheila Coleman θα μας πει η ίδια την ιδιότητά της και ό,τι έχει σχέση με όλη αυτή την ιστορία που λέγεται Hillsborough Disaster. Ms. Sheila Coleman, would you please tell us your idea about what you're doing here and anything, why you got involved with Hillsborough Justice Campaign?
Well, it's now 15 years since the Hillsborough disaster, and I am involved with the Hillsborough Justice Campaign. I've been around Hillsborough issues since 1989. I was initially employed on an academic project to research and monitor the legal proceedings arising out of the disaster. So to that end, I sat through the inquests of the deceased and analysed the proceedings, the Justice Taylor inquiry and various other legal proceedings. Throughout that time, I got to know some of the bereaved and a lot of the survivors very well, and was just astounded really by what had happened, not just the disaster itself, because being from Liverpool and being a Liverpool supporter, I was as heartbroken as anybody, the idea that people could go to a football match and lose their lives. But the more I sat through the legal proceedings and the more I listened to the stories of mothers and fathers who had gone to identify the children, and I saw what they had gone through, the way they were treated, it just really exacerbated the situation. The dead had been treated appallingly. The survivors had been treated appallingly, and subsequently families were. And so to that end, I was party to writing and having work published around my work, but then I just couldn't walk away. I felt that there was an ethical responsibility to stay around the people who had had a profound effect on me. I saw them and I saw the amazing strength they had, and in particular for me, people who had lost their children. I couldn't imagine, and I would never really want to imagine what it must be like. I had a son, and the idea of losing him was somewhere I never wanted to go in my head, that idea. And yet I was meeting mothers who had to confront the most awful thing of losing your child dying before you. And they were facing it with such strength, and they were displaying such strength and such dignity. But even so, they were being treated appallingly because they were being told lies as to how their children had died.
This is my next question. After a disaster, I would like you to tell me about the positive and the negative reactions of the society and the authorities, which thing was positive for you, which reaction was positive and which is negative. We know that a lot of trials came after that, trying to give justice for the people.
Yes.
So give us, as best as you can, the picture.
Well, For me, the positive thing that came out of the disaster was the collective sense of grief. It was tangible almost in this city. The city was in mourning, and you didn't have to voice it, you didn't have to articulate. Everybody knew how everybody else felt. There was an air about the city, and that's the physical embodiment of that was the Anfield Ground, which became a floral shrine to the dead of Hillsborough. That was just such a positive side of it, that you felt you could grieve. Although I was fortunate enough not to lose anybody in the disaster, nevertheless, you did feel a vicarious grief, and it was okay to feel like that. It was okay to sit quietly over a drink, and someone would understand why you mightn't want to speak, that you were maybe reflecting, it could have been me, or it could have been my brother, my son. And that was a positive thing, and that was echoed not just in this city. The support and the show of support from other places, other countries, other people was a very positive aspect. Of course, the most obvious negative aspect of it were the lies that were told immediately, and how those lies were perpetrated through the media. The British press, it wasn't just the British press was appalling though. Everybody knows The Sun and the headline, The Truth, which for us meant the lies of what Liverpool fans had allegedly done. We all know they were lies. For me, I wanted to know where a journalist or an editor had first been given that idea, and the more I looked into that, you saw that there was a line coming out, there was an argument coming out, and basically you saw the beginning of a cover-up. You saw a rationale behind sowing the seeds of those lies, and that was such a negative thing. The Sun was appalling, but a lot of the other papers were as well. And for me, one of the most negative aspects, which endures to the present day, is that the lies told at that early stage still raise their head in a variety of ways. If I might give you just one example, the film Gladiators, which came out the other year, used footage of various scenes of violence. And one of the footages that was shown was of the Hillsborough disaster, with a commentary that said about rampaging Liverpool fans who killed each other. Another example was the Michael Moore film Bowling for Columbine, in which again Hillsborough was shown as violence and fans killing each other. I have to say that Michael Moore, when we brought that to his attention, was actually horrified, and what it showed was where they were getting their footage from, where these international film companies were getting their footage from, and it was from our own BBC. The BBC here was actually, archived material which puts Hillsborough under football violence and hooliganism.
I see. What about the police? There was a big problem with the police, and they never got justice through them. By the way, the information about the whole story gives us the picture that police was protected on this disaster.
Yes, the Lord Justice Taylor's inquiry, which arose out of the disaster, stated quite clearly that the cause of the disaster was the breakdown of police control. The police lost total control on that day. The senior officers, the officer in charge of the ground on that day, couldn't hack it. He could just not cope. And what is appalling, I have actually been in the control room, which has gone over the control room at the Hillsborough ground, and from where the officers were, you could actually zoom in and see the colour of somebody's eyes who were standing on the terraces, and yet those same officers expected us to believe that they couldn't see signs of distress in anybody, and yet we well know that people were in distress for a long time in those pens before the deaths occurred. And a lot of the lies that came about in the media were first put about by the police, because one of the senior officers was forced to apologise and say, I said that and I'm sorry. The big thing being Liverpool fans broke down the gate and rushed in and killed other fans. That lie was put into the public domain by the senior police officer on charge that day. He later apologised, but the damage was done. That appeared in press, which went all over the world. Liverpool fans killed their own fans. So not only do you have bereaved families mourning the loss of their loved ones, you then have hundreds, well indeed thousands of survivors who are racked with guilt because they're alive and their fellow fans have died, but they then have to live with the stigma of having effectively killed their fellow supporters.
I see. On that day, witnesses are saying that if their reaction was faster, they would save more lives. And up to date, we don't have justice for the people that they left this world, and of course for the survivors. What do you believe? Is there going to be any justice at the future?
I have to believe that at some point there will be justice. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time being involved in the Hillsborough Justice Campaign, and a lot of people are, and we'll have wasted our time for 15 years. I believe Hillsborough is a human rights issue, a civil rights issue. It is so fundamental around the right to life, and yes, I agree, and I am of the belief that lives could have been saved that day, and that's not just an emotional response because you want lives to be saved. That is based on evidence, hard evidence of people still being alive after the time that the legal system say they were dead. We know, and at a personal level, I conducted many interviews in the early days following the disaster, where I spoke with the emergency services, where I spoke with police officers, and the findings of the research I was involved in was very clearly that had responses been quicker, people could have been saved. Moreover, people were alive, and so clearly there was a lack of response. What was very interesting for me with a lot of the professionals that I interviewed was that collectively, certainly at a senior level, when they were showing when they were showing a front around what occurred on the day, they had a party line on it. Yes, the ambulance service, we did this. Yes, the police, we did this, or, you know, and everything was by the book. But what I often found that after I'd finished the interview, the same senior officer would actually pull me to one side and tell me a different story. And it was almost like it was cathartic. It was like confessing his own failings in it. And I can think of numerous, without naming them, I can think of numerous professionals from the various agencies, emergency agencies, that professionally said one thing and privately to me said something else, admitted the mistakes they made, and admitted the response wasn't the correct one. And I think a lot lived with guilt, and probably still do live with guilt, that I hope one day they have the courage to be more public about. Yeah.
I think that Hillsborough Justice Campaign is connected with many supporters all over Europe and all over the world. What support do you get from them?
Oh, immense support, not just at the practical level of donations and sending us items that we might be able to auction or raffle to fundraise, but at the level of boosting morale. We've been around a long time. 15 years is a long time to be involved in something which at times is heartbreaking and at times can be extremely demoralising. You walk away from a court case and it's gone against the families once again, and it looks like every door's been closed in their face once again. And for someone like myself who is not a bereaved family or a supporter, I personally always feel a tremendous sense of failure and that I have let people down, that maybe I could have done more, I could have said something differently. And obviously being objective, that's not the case, but your emotions get in the way. So when we get an email from somebody in Singapore, or a letter from somebody in Australia, or a donation off somebody in Ireland, or somebody in Greece, Spain, wherever, it's go, wow, somebody in this country is sitting thinking of us. And you know, we hold our meetings, you know, in a shop near to the ground on a Monday evening, winter nights, it's cold, it's miserable, you mightn't feel like travelling to the meeting, but you do. And if, you know, sort of, you have this email or you have this letter to show, it's just a real boost to people to know that people care.
I see. So at the end of the story, there is hope for the future. Would you like to make a wish for people going to football grounds today at future? What would you like to wish?
I would wish that what happened to 96 people who went to a football ground in 1989 never happens to them. And I would wish that they realise that it could have been them, and that they would understand why the Hillsborough Justice Campaign continues to fight. And my ultimate general wish is that the bereaved receive the justice they so richly deserve, that the dead can rest in peace, and then at some point bereaved families can try to have some measure of a life knowing they did absolutely everything they could for their loved ones, and also that survivors